what's up guys, we're back again covering one of my favorite rappers of all time, Sematary, and it really seems like the guy's been having a rough couple days because not only is he beefing with another rap group known as Shed Theory, but his own group, Haunted Mound, seems to be falling apart. Although that's not totally fair to say because not everybody's leaving the group, but there are a couple members known as Goner and Turnabout that have decided to leave. This actually happened about a month ago when I heard about it at the time, but I decided not to cover it because there wasn't a whole lot of information about why they left the group. Some people were saying they weren't going to talk about it because maybe they were under NDA, but I had a feeling they were going to say something publicly eventually because it is a pretty common theme for Sematary to have friends fall out with them and then call them out later on. We've seen it with Ghost Mountain, we've seen it with Juju, and now we're seeing it with Goner as well. The first thing we got a month ago is the two of them posting a screenshot saying I am no longer affiliated with Haunted Mound, leaving on mutual terms, new music coming soon, with the heart. He would say the same thing on Twitter saying no longer associated with Haunted Mound, no I will not be going on tour, music coming soon, love y'all. Just last night Goner decided to take to his Twitter to explain why him and Turnabout decided to leave the Mound. Here's the whole description, I'm going to read it out. Why I left Haunted Mound. I'll start by saying this is only addressing Sematary or Zane. I have so much love for everybody else. I was never going to do this because I didn't want this to be the start of my own solo journey in music. I'm struggling to stay quiet and respectful based on my very last experience with Zane. As previously stated, although there were many instances of disrespect, unfair power dynamics, and disagreements, Turn and I left wanting nothing but mutual respect. So on May 3rd, 2024, we decided to purchase tickets and go to the SCL show. This was an effort to show support and provide an opportunity to come to an understanding, but for someone who hates the law so much, the joke wrote itself. We were greeted by security who had pictures of our passports saying that we weren't allowed in. Keep in mind we never had any ideas of causing harm or any trouble, we just wanted to show support. I would understand the concern if it happened to be with tons of people, but it was just us and our girlfriends. This was a slap in the face and solidified my judgment on Zane. I also want to address that I am grateful for the opportunities that were given to me by him, but I will not let my contributions to Haunted Mound go unnoticed. There are three main factors that led Turn and I to our departure: personality, control, and drug abuse. I have never met anyone who was so disrespectful and shameless about the way he treated my friends, my family, and everybody else in Haunted Mound. For example, my girlfriend would make jokes as anyone does and was told, yeah, well I can fire your boyfriend, or I gave your boyfriend a job, which to him was funny, even if her original joke had nothing to do with my employment or telling my friends to screw off. This happened when we were trying to introduce themselves at the Cutter Lane cabin party. Turn shares similar experiences as well. Throughout our time in Haunted Mound, Turn specifically dealt with constantly being belittled, having his ideas instantly shot down, and treated like his 2 cents had no value or made no sense. And he would often be told things like shut the fuck up Turn. Now keep in mind this is only a sliver of the experiences that we had in the 3 years that we knew him. This was all driven by his ego, god complex, and full belief of his character. There was never a moment when he was out of character. I struggle with this because I genuinely cared about him as a friend, and it was hard for me to confront him about the disrespectful behavior as the unfair power dynamic grew and grew. This became a severe issue for us when the power dynamic bled into everybody's creative process. In our experience, it was a battle to drop prior to any of Zane's projects. It's also a fight to do collabs or any outside work without his permission. How do you expect us as young adults navigating life and trying to make a living expect us to grow when all you did was hinder our growth? On a fundamental level, no person who claims to be your friend should try to hinder how you make other income and control your creative choices, while everyone else is living at their parents' house, yet he would consistently flex his success and daily purchases off the backs of everybody else's contribution to the Mound in the past 3 years, and all these issues grew even larger once his drug use became even more frequent. Zane's drug use has progressively gotten worse, specifically within the last year. At first it was just pouring up with the boys, and now he has evolved into a full-on opiate addict, taking up to 6 30s a day. And because of this, his withdrawals have massively swayed his temperament and decision making. There were days on tour where his withdrawals were insufferable, and his drug use is nothing but hypocrisy. For example, in July 2023, we embarked on tour to Australia and New Zealand. On this tour, a fellow member of the Haunted Mound was sent home due to concerns of an addiction and a growing drug habit that was going too far. Meanwhile, Zane continued to do drugs without any repercussions just because he is the boss. Turn and I have repeatedly stated our concerns to Zane about his addiction, which clearly, for lack of a better term, went in one ear and straight out the other. This combination of concerns is what drove us to lose passion in the project. Turn and I no longer wanted to represent such a power-hungry, disrespectful, and insufferable person. We are not doing this for clout. We feel the truth must be addressed. Much love to everybody that has supported us, and much love and well wishes to everybody else who's still in Haunted Mound. So that's basically his full explanation of why he decided to leave Haunted Mound. I imagine he speaks for Turnabout as well, because Turnabout hasn't put anything out publicly on his own social media, but he has mentioned quite a few times throughout, so it's probably both of them speaking through this one tweet. And honestly, this doesn't seem too off-brand for Sematary. Even people in the Haunted Mound subreddit are talking about how it seems like this keeps happening over and over again, how they're upset that the group just keeps losing members. But the main criticism I always hear about people who leave Haunted Mound is that they should be more grateful for Sematary, because after all, he gave them a platform, he made them famous, he was able to give them clout, and now they're somebody when they were nobody before they met him. And in certain cases I do understand that, but at the same time, being famous but not being able to make any money, not being able to do any collaborations, and having no freedom, being completely controlled by Sematary, definitely doesn't put you in the best spot, because as we already know, Sematary has a pretty big ego, not to mention he's always withdrawing off of drugs, or he's on drugs, so you never know if you're going to be on his good side, his bad side. Not to mention he has full control over their Instagram accounts and what they can post on there. He has to approve collaborations, so they're not allowed to go outside of the box and try to work with different people. And this is really trapping them in a corner, because they can only work with him, but at the same time they're not making enough money off of the shows and everything that has to do with Haunted Mound, so they're trying to go to different sources to make money to get out of their parents' house, but they can't. Meanwhile, Sematary's making tons of money and flexing it in their face every day. So having all the clout and being famous and not making enough money to even live on your own definitely isn't ideal. I'm not really sure what to think about them trying to go to Sematary's show and getting turned away at the door. I mean, that does seem kind of shitty, but at the same time I understand that Sematary might have thought they were trying to show up to start a problem, and they're like, well, we didn't show up with a bunch of guys, but that doesn't mean you couldn't try to start a problem, get up on stage or yell something at Sematary or get fans to notice you, and then that would cause a problem. So I do understand the rationale behind that, but at the same time, factoring in everything that Sematary did to them during the time that they were in the Mound, I can understand why this was the straw that broke the camel's back. It feels like a very egocentric move where he's like, oh, I'm too good to let you guys even come to my show, but I don't know, might have been a misunderstanding. But either way, just like that, Haunted Mound has lost 2 more members. Sematary's circle is getting smaller and smaller. Apparently he's still very addicted to drugs, so we don't know where he's going to go from here. But on the other side of things, I gotta talk about how he's beefing with the rapper known as Joeyy. So Joey's a member of a group known as Shed Theory. He's also adjacent to Sam Hyde, which if you don't know, used to be a comedian that had a show called $1 Million Extreme on Adult Swim. He got canceled because he ended up having some connections to the alt-right, and then after that he ended up making a bunch of money on alternative websites, and he's still pretty relevant nowadays, but a lot of people really don't like him. Meanwhile, Sematary is super left-leaning, so they politically don't agree, and I think that might have been what started this beef. Started off with Joeyy posting a couple pictures on his Instagram story of him listening to Sematary music. He's kind of trolling Sematary here, but I don't feel like he was actually trying to diss him or go after him. It's just kind of a known thing in the underground that Sematary's kind of corny, and trolls are going to troll at the end of the day. So kind of dissed him on this leaked song where he's talking about this rapper known as Sebi, and he says Sebi might as well be Sematary, which honestly is kind of funny. I feel like that's not that big of a diss. But at the same time, you can see that Joey's firing a couple blanks at Sematary, so you can see why he's getting a little bit pissed off. It turns out that Sematary has been noticing this because he ended up doing an interview with the magazine called Interview Magazine, where he basically talks about somebody that he despises the most in the underground. He says, no personal beefs that need to be on record. I'm not rocking with Redacted. I'm not rocking with that alt-right shit in the underground. That's the best I can offer. They need to not make music anymore. If I could, I'd make sure he wasn't around. Now at first that doesn't seem too bad, because it's like Sematary's saying, I don't like these guys. If I could have my choice, I wouldn't have them in the underground because I don't agree with them politically. But then the interviewer says, so you would take it into your own hands? And he says, yeah, when I see those fools, it's on. And honestly, if I was Joeyy right now, I'd be a little bit afraid, because we know that Sematary has been training for years by slapping his own fans. So once he gets into a fight, he's gonna have hands of fury, let me tell you. But on a real note, we don't really know if this is about Joeyy because the name is redacted. But when it comes to alt-right rappers in the underground, I guess you would first think about them since they have affiliation to Sam Hyde. By the way, I really don't care about politics, so I'm sorry if I'm getting any of this wrong. I'm just saying what they're saying about each other. But apparently Joeyy did think this was about him, because he ended up posting a video on Instagram where he was talking about how people from Haunted Mound would come up to him and ask for fan pictures. He talks about how half the time they want to fuck with them, half the time they don't. He doesn't really know why they keep being so wishy-washy with everything.
First of all, the opposition, y'all are fucking stupid. Listen, I'm gonna say it like this. Half of y'all are fans. I run into you. You're shaking. I tell you, don't worry, I'm not gonna do nothing to you. And then you ask for a picture, but then you're like, oh, I can't take a picture with you because And I'm like, alright, whatever, it's fine. Then you meet the bros, and you ask them for a picture, you take pictures with them on your phone. Okay, you're low-key fans, I get it. And then you go and pay for PR, and use that PR to his bodily harm on who's presumably me and my friends. Meanwhile, you dick riding my other friends. So y'all can't make your mind up about who you want to and who you don't want to with. So you're stupid. And y'all know where I'm at. You know where I'm gonna stay at. You know where we stay at. You lucky I was OT when y'all came to the East. You know where I'm at. And you won't listen to my DMs, you won't talk to me in DMs. What the you want from me? Stupid.
And says they're low-key fans, then closes off by saying, you know where I live if you want to find me, which to me is kind of crazy because all these little white boys are talking about stuff like they're actually in Chirac. I know you guys make Chief Keef type music, but is anyone really going to roll up on anybody and shoot them? I don't think it's that serious. I mean, what do I know? Frank Hassel was associated with these people too, and he ended up pulling up on Boogie 2988. He had the scrap. That was some pretty serious gang conflict right there, so maybe it's more serious than I thought. It's so weird to see the rap game and YouTube bleeding into each other, but who is he actually talking about in this video? Well, luckily we have another member of Shed Theory called Ricky Chicks who revealed the fact that it was actually Buckshot who's a big fan of them. And this is some pretty dark stuff because Buckshot is actually one of Sematary's closest associates, so being posted up with the opposition is definitely a betrayal of Sematary. I'm not sure how he feels about it, but here's what Ricky Chicks had to say.
Buckshot's gonna come ask us for pictures again, right? This is what's gonna happen. You're gonna get smashed upside the head, and then Buckshot's gonna ask us for a picture after again too, right? Man, we don't start problems with anyone. Heads always got some shit to say.
So yeah, it definitely looks like things are heating up on both sides of things. They're getting pretty upset about Sematary. He's sending a couple sneak disses, and we're not really sure what's going to happen, but I feel like he needs to get his own house in order before he starts going at other people. Because if he keeps losing members the way that he is, there's not going to be a Haunted Mountain left, because we already know what went down with Ghost Mountain. I mean, there's some different types of information about that. Sematary said he left because he went to college, where Ghost Mountain said that it's a little bit more serious than that. And when you start to see a perpetual pattern of somebody screwing over everybody around them, you know there's a problem. And just to make sure I'm covering all angles of this, let me talk about Ghost Mountain and Sematary too, because the last time I talked about the incident between them, a lot of people thought I was being biased towards Ghost Mountain, so I'll try to give you full context on both sides of the story. So Ghost Mountain and Sematary were childhood friends. I think they might have met in high school. I'm not really sure because Sematary says he didn't really have any friends growing up, but they did know each other from at least a little bit before they started making music. Sematary was a beat maker at the time, being inspired by people like Chief Keef and Black Cray, and eventually he realized that making these beats weren't going to pay the bills, so he decided to become a full-on rapper, or whatever style of music you call this. I'd probably say witch house, that's what I hear most people say, but I'm not sure if it really fits into that genre or not. Actually, Sematary would convince Ghost Mountain to start rapping alongside him, dropping 2 collab EPs called Grave House and 100 Acre Risk, which are considered classic by Sematary fans, and at the same time Sematary dropped 3 solo projects, Rainbow Bridge 1, 2, and 3, and there was a planned solo Ghost Mountain EP that never ended up dropping. A lot of Sematary's most popular early music is with Ghost Mountain, but eventually he would end up deleting all the songs off his SoundCloud and starting to distance himself away from Haunted Mound. Now at first this wasn't that big of a deal. Of course fans were upset that their favorite duo was breaking up, but at the same time they were kids when they were making this music. Ghost Mountain was growing up and he wanted to go to college and pursue an actual career. He didn't think that music would be stable enough to really support himself off of. Makes a lot of sense because I know we want to see people succeed in the music industry, but only about 10% of people who try to go into it actually make it anywhere. I think Sematary was a little bit upset that his friend decided to pursue a more normal career. He speaks about this a little bit on the Mascarilla podcast where he said he really wanted Ghost Mountain to try to pursue music full time, but he just wouldn't go for it.
He was just into more regular life stuff, and I'm only about this ever. So I knew he was hella good, so I was like, bro, you should really do this, bro. You're gonna be really big, bro. Like, it's super fire when you do it, yada yada yada. And he like kept coming to the studio with no lyrics written or nothing, and didn't show up for videos, hella flaky. And yeah, that just led to tensions when one person's really into it and the other one's like, it's a hobby. So.
It didn't seem like that big of a deal. Just 2 friends going in totally opposite directions in life. It happens a lot. You end up making rap music with your friends early on. Sometimes you make it, sometimes they go and do something else. It doesn't really matter. But as time went on, more information would start to come out about the situation that painted it in kind of a worse light. Because Sematary would end up taking down both Grave House and 100 Acre Risk off of Spotify, and a lot of fans were confused, hopping in his DMs to try to ask what was going on. And his response is that he didn't want his 2 biggest songs to be with somebody that didn't even make music anymore. He didn't want Ghost Mountain getting clout off of of his name, and at the same time he couldn't perform them because he didn't have Ghost Mountain beside him, so he thought they were worthless. Which I somewhat understand because you don't want your old songs to be more popular than everything else you're doing in the modern day, but calling his fans spoiled for wanting those songs to still be up doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, they're popular, people like them, so why not keep them up and keep them accessible so people can listen to what they want to listen to? And at the same time, you can't help but feel like there's something a little bit deeper going on there. It seems like Sematary is actually pretty frustrated with Ghost Mountain, and he spoke on it a little bit more in the Masquerilla podcast, saying that they actually fell out because Ghost Mountain had some not so nice things to say about him.
Still friends? You talk at all?
No,
It's just
he had
over.
he had some mean things to say about us, probably because he's sore he ain't here with us.
Seeing as how Ghost Mountain wasn't active online at the time and wasn't really making music, there was no way he was ever going to respond to Sematary until all of a sudden somebody actually ended up posting some DMs from Ghost Mountain on the Haunted Mound subreddit. Apparently these are from January 2022, about a year after they fell out, and they were posted about 5 months after they were actually screenshotted, so I'm not really sure why the person waited so long to put them out, but here they are. He said, Sematary and I had fundamental disagreements, and his ever-growing ego and warped attitude brought about massive issues for me and others in my life. I tried to approach him multiple times about his misogyny and use of violent elements in the project. That is something that I will never associate with, but I was met with nothing but ambivalence and aggression. That dynamic was fucked up, and I essentially had no choice but to remove myself completely. The support he's gained is based on a manufactured persona that he valued far more than our collaboration and interpersonal relationship. Anything I make and have made should not be associated with GM or Haunted Mound, and any resemblance to my past work is purely coincidental. It's probably time for people to know, since the narrative online is so different from the actual things that went down, but don't feel like you got the word from me, you feel me? Not really sure what he's trying to say here, especially since the person who posted all this cut so much stuff together. He actually ended up blanking out a couple parts of this paragraph and then said spread the word, but then again. The fan then asks if he's ever going to do music again, and he basically says if he does, he's not going to drop it under the Ghost Mountain name because he's completely stepping away from that project once and for all. So that kind of answers some questions, but also leaves more because we don't know if this is the real Ghost Mountain. We don't know how the conversation was sliced up to make it seem like it was one way or another because he ended up blanking out so much information. We don't know if Ghost Mountain actually wanted this to be shared online. It kind of seems like he did want it to be shared, but at the same time we're not really sure about that. But this ended up causing so many problems within the community that Buckshot actually ended up addressing the entire situation, which I don't really know how to feel about. I feel like you shouldn't try to address every single thing going on within your fan base because then they're going to expect you to answer to everything, but maybe it was a good move. But apparently Buckshot has known the two of them for the longest, so he should have a pretty unbiased perspective on it for the most part, but at the same time he still works with Sematary, so he might be a little bit biased towards his side. So he starts off by saying addressing fuckery. He says, alright, need to address the absolute fuckery that's been going on here caused by this Reddit user right here that set our fanbase and community into a blaze. Do note, I may not word this as formally as I was given the urgency of the situation that has arisen. I am in a unique position to address this situation as I am the only member that's been in Haunted Mound from early on with both Ghost and Sam, so I have a third person perspective on all of this. I've been working with the both of them since they had about 700 followers on Instagram very early on in 2020, and I have basically watched their friendship deteriorate throughout all the projects. I will start by saying these DMs posted by this user were actually from Ghost and they are real, but they're from 5 months ago in January. Ghost did not give permission for them to be posted, least of all today. Sharing them was incredibly inappropriate and a huge disrespect of confidentiality towards a very private person. I did reach out to Ghost last summer in 2021 to check to see what's up with him, and he held the same point of view and reasoning as he did in DMs, which have been posted. Ghost has changed its perspective in recent months after the DM conversation and has been in a more consistent contact with Sematary, and amends have been made since then. They are now on good terms, but that doesn't mean that anything musically related is going to come out from the two of them working together. This does not mean Ghost will return, however. Apologies have been exchanged, closure has been reached, and Ghost has told Sematary personally that his opinions and views have changed, and the initial perspective may have been informed by other influences. Ghost no longer feels as strongly as the way that he did in private DMs posted on Reddit, and Ghost and Sematary have been in contact with each other since early 2022. I am using as much discretion as possible because I don't want either Sematary or Ghost to feel uncomfortable as a result of my post. But I can't say for a fact that Ghost has heard our newer projects and he gave constructive criticism on both of them. So there you have it. Ghost and Sematary basically made up behind the scenes, and there's no real reason to think that this would be a lie. I feel like Ghost Mountain is a normal guy living a normal life and he doesn't want Sematary to hate him forever, so they had a bit of a conversation. They're not really cool with each other, but they can at least get along. They're not really friends, not enemies, somewhere in between, and that's basically the whole situation between Sematary and Ghost Mountain. Although with the added context, it is a bit interesting to note that Ghost Mountain said that Sematary was very egocentric and he really played into his character full time, and then Goner said the exact same thing. So it feels like Sematary really plays into that character no matter what. He's never out of it, and he's always trying to be Sematary all the time, which is good for the fans, but for people around him it probably gets really annoying. But is it that serious? Not really sure. Although there is one more drama that Sematary got into with another rapper known as Juju. This one's not that big either. It's basically that they worked on an album together, and then afterwards Juju went on to say that Sematary was basically really controlling of him, had a very big ego, and wanted him to only work with certain people.
With Sematary, right? Sematary was just trying to dictate who and who I can't associate with based on who they associate with, and judging my character based on it in a way that I found disrespectful as someone who is younger than me, and someone who looks up to me, and as someone who is extremely privileged and has done nothing to elevate me. And he's telling me not to associate with people who do things to help me as a person, who look out for me as someone who is like literally under fucking privileged. I'm broke, you get me? So he's trying to be some, oh, you shouldn't talk to these guys. No. So that's why I don't fuck with Sematary. And that's why he doesn't fuck with me, just because I don't take being told.
Seeing as how Juju was already a bigger rapper than Sematary and a lot older than him, he didn't take it that seriously, but they ended up falling out not long after that. Which once again reconfirms the whole point that Sematary is very controlling over his collaborators. He only lets them work with certain people, and they feel very closed off because of that. And with that said, basically everything that Goner said has been confirmed by another person, so either all these people just happen to hate Sematary, or Sematary really is what everybody says he is. And I feel like that's creating a divide within the fan base, where half of the fans are like, I like the music, but I can't stand him as a person, and the other half is like, no, Sematary's always right. He has his cult fans, and then it's just regular fans, I guess you could say. But you know what? At this point, I'm very invested. I want to see where this is going to go. I want to see how many more people leave Haunted Mound, if Haunted Mound becomes the most prolific rap group of all time. But one thing I just seen right at the end of this video, somebody sent me a picture of Joey and Sematary together at a party, and apparently Joey was trying to tap on his shoulder, but he wouldn't turn around, so that's very interesting. Sematary said it was on site, but then he wouldn't turn around and face him. I'm kind of confused why Sematary's even starting beef with these people in the first place, because after all, if you're an artist and they're an artist, you're probably going to run into each other at the same places once in a while, and then you might get beat up, and there's really no reason for it. You guys didn't really do anything to each other. It's a few sneak disses here and there, but it's not that serious where you guys gotta, like, you know, get it back in blood, slide for Vaughn type of situation. But that's just my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. All the beefs of Sematary, it wasn't really meant to be that, but I guess it kind of turned into that over time. And tell me what you think is going to happen next. Are you still a fan of Sematary? Are you not? I do want to give a quick shout out to Sadport, because he's the guy who actually posted some of this stuff on Instagram, so I was able to find it from there. So shout out him, shout out Sematary, shout out Knife Gang. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel because I'm trying to get to 14K. Besides that, thank you guys for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.